Good afternoon. We are at the All-Russian Institute of Plant Protection, and with us is our guest, Alexander Hyutti. Alexander, can you tell us what you do and what your role is at the All-Russian Institute of Plant Protection?
Good afternoon, Victor. Well, the main role is, of course, working with potato pathogens and the structure of potatoes. That is what I have been doing for many years.
Alexander, this year, the weather conditions in Russia have indeed created a challenging situation. It was a cold, prolonged May, a hot summer, and in some regions, rainy. What is your overall assessment of the load in terms of bacterial and fungal diseases? Which diseases were most actively expressed this year?
Diseases are complexes, including viral, bacterial, fungal diseases, and nematodes. Undoubtedly, the quality of seed material is the primary factor. That is, regardless of whether we have a favorable or unfavorable year for the development of a particular group of pathogens, the quality of seed material is of utmost importance, because to some extent, diseases will manifest. As for this specific year and its conditions in terms of and circumstances, we all know from hearsay that the conditions have been quite challenging. This is certainly due to the drop in temperature at the beginning of the legitimization season. First of all, this has affected the southern regions, where, let's say, due to the prevailing conditions, farmers neglect the use of certain chemical protection agents, especially against fungal diseases. The brightness of rhizoctonia has manifested. The losses from rhizoctonia in some farms were, even in the regions, extreme. That is, many farmers saw this issue for the first time and could not understand what it was. Considering that the populations of rhizoctonia in Russia are changing, meaning that mutations are occurring and they are acquiring resistance to certain fungicides, the problem is very acute. And of course, to understand how to combat it, it is necessary to know, so to speak, what rhizoctonia you have in the field and what rhizoctonia you have on the tuber. So, to understand the proper selection of fungicides, specifically in your conditions, did it work?
This year, there have been a number of outbreaks of Phytophthora in various regions of Europe due to the prolonged rainy and unpredictable weather, especially as there is currently an active promotion in Europe regarding the need for farmers to pay particular attention to and adequately prepare for the 2025 season.
Undoubtedly, we are no exception. Cassinia has remained on the sidelines. Phytophthora has also severely affected the plantings of our potato growers. In other words, a viable Phytophthora outbreak is an epiphytotic one. Such epiphytotics usually occur once every 5 to 7 years. Sometimes Phytophthora appears as an epiphytotic, and this is no exception. The main trouble was already visible in the field. That is, indeed, in many areas where I have been, the potato showed clear signs of leaf damage from this lion-like organism, and the protection schemes that were applied were not effective. All of this led to the occurrence of infected tubers. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to find potatoes in Russia that are free from bacterial infection, and Phytophthora was precisely what provoked its manifestation. In fact, there were many factors, but Phytophthora is indeed one of them. We observed that even when potatoes were brought in from the field for analysis to understand what was happening to them and why they were rotting, there was a question of whether it made sense to continue bringing samples from the storage facilities, which were slowly starting to leak. Here, the first manifestation has always been Phytophthora. This was especially noticeable in varieties that either had not yet formed sufficiently or had formed their skin very poorly, or had some mechanical damage during storage. When such material was sent to our laboratory, we created. And furthermore, it is no secret that the association of bacterial diseases with Phytophthora led to its leakage. Well, actually, the situation in the field was terrible. Therefore, as expected, rhizoctonia and Phytophthora are still abundant this year. In principle, the entire complex, regardless of the pathogens causing them, ultimately comes down to wet rots. Because this season has also shown, especially in the analysis of the batches that were planted this year, there was a significant infection specifically by fungi of the genus Fusarium, which caused the rotting of potatoes. And in fact, if we conducted an analysis according to GOST, then these tubers were classified as having a percentage that fell into the category of wet rot. Usually, the classic pathogens that cause the rotting of potato exudate are bacterial pathogens. But in this, he was surprised that Mazban is this victorious process of diseases, specifically tuberculosis.
Plus, Alexander, it is now the month of October, the middle of October. An active storage is currently underway, and the process is in progress, efficient and reliable. Do you have any recommendations or suggestions, in your opinion, for a farmer on how to conduct a quick analysis of the condition of the material he is storing without having the necessary tools in order to make a decision on how long this potato can be kept before it needs to be used for sale in the near future? That might be helpful in this situation to evaluate the current state or condition of the stored material effectively and efficiently without the use of specialized equipment or tools to determine the optimal duration for storage before it is necessary to proceed with selling the potatoes in the upcoming future as planned. There is a package analysis available, right?
In fact, this is a wonderful method, but it can yield overly positive or negative results because, undoubtedly, a package is a limited space, a container with its own microclimate. Certainly, when we seal it, even under autogenic conditions, it can start to spoil. Therefore, I would recommend, first and foremost, to contact a laboratory that you trust so they can create a plan to analyze the provocation of the enhanced material to see what will happen with it. Independently, yes, I respect and love the package method. Well, maybe I can do this on my own, but I fear it would be better. And behind me, you see these million German cameras that create the complete climate necessary, the temperature and humidity, and if needed, the lighting. It is better to test the material this way at different temperatures and humidity levels to understand how it behaves. Usually, 5 to 7 days is sufficient for this. A knowledgeable farmer, undoubtedly and certainly a producer of potatoes, knows this. So you see, we have problems, of course.
All right. What are your recommendations if rot is discovered in the storage? Then, well, they have already stored it, checked the healing period, the dormancy process of the potatoes, and visible disease foci can be seen. What are your recommendations, in your expert opinion, as scientists for farmers, to prevent, in a timely manner and effectively, the rapid development of diseases?
If we see a particular problem, we must understand that it did not arise for no reason. We have violated something with you. It is clear that in this particular place, where a certain type of rot manifests, the content or quantity of a particular pathogen has exceeded the norm, regardless of whether it is some pathogen, bacteria, fungi, or something else. Here. And then, of course, we need to figure out why this occurred. Usually, such things do not happen out of nowhere. Most likely, there was an excessive infectious load, and the infectious process began. The start of the infectious process was triggered. That is, it was provoked by certain conditions. Either it was the maximum concentration of this pathogen, or some favorable conditions. There may have been issues with humidity in the storage, because almost all the complexes that manifest as wet rot, when the potatoes leak, had problems with both humidity and temperature, which contributed to the situation. To really understand the issue, it is necessary to send the potatoes for analysis. If possible, invite a qualified plant pathologist to your place, or conduct a masterclass. The series for laboratory analysis should be minimized. If possible, localize it. This is not widespread, because if it is a fungal disease, it usually has a focal nature, and this can be managed. If it is a bacterium, we need to understand whether the batch is uniformly infected, or if it is just a coincidence that this particular container, right here, in this location, started to leak. But this is related to the fact that there is some problem that needs to be solved. This is my unpreferred recommendation. If there is an opportunity to treat the potatoes before storage, then potatoes can be treated before storage. This solves many problems, as demonstrated by the experience of dry treatment.
The use of a kind of checkers?
Yes, I also recommend checkers, that is, to specifically solve the problem.
Superficial problems.
Surface issues? Yes. Yes, this is very good prevention. That's good. Alexander, is there a next question?
Recently, in your opinion, considering your work, have there been changes in diseases? Meaning, is there any specificity emerging with climate change and the specifics of potato production? Are there changes for the better or for the worse? What do you observe regarding diseases?
In my personal opinion, the current sanitary situation in Russia is unfortunately quite sad. This means that the quality of potatoes in Russia leaves much to be desired. Unfortunately, this is a headache.
What percentage of loss do you think there is?
In general, the percentage of loss varies from region to region, from farm to farm. At some point in time, the farmer did not encounter this and was left with a different set of problems. Then it changes. Well, basically that's normal because microorganisms are living organisms. Everything flows, everything changes. At first glance, at least over the past 3 years, the primary issue, which is related to climate change, has been the hot and dry summers, or the very contrasting weather patterns, alternating between heavy rainfall and cooling. First, there is the complex of streptomycetes, which are known to cause common scab, and this has become a headache. Second, as it has always been, there is the complex of fungus-like organisms, which includes Phytophthora and Pythium, the latter of which we have not yet discussed. For 2 years, there has been ecophytopathology, that is, the Northwestern Federal District Central and Volga. A lot of potatoes simply leak either in the field or literally 10, 14 days after being stored. In other words, the potatoes are leaking.
Previously, there was a problem with Pythium. It was more prevalent in the southern regions. To what extent does the current climate connection also affect this, and has it spread further north?
It has moved further north, yes. So here we are at the All-Russian Institute of Plant Protection, and we have a farm that is engaged in potato cultivation to a small extent. They faced this issue last year, and this year is no exception. What are the prospects for early detection methods in forecasting, in combating diseases, and in addressing various problems? In various fields such as environmental science, public health, and technology, these methods are crucial for timely interventions and effective management of potential threats. Unfortunately, in Russia, since the collapse of the Soviet Union, these methods have practically disappeared. That is exactly the point. No one in Russia is exactly dealing with this large volume. This is a problem, because all developed countries, including the United States, spend colossal amounts of money to monitor Phytophthora in real time, even during the winter. We need to remove the pink rot from the spores, because even if we have perfect protection throughout Russia, spores will still come to us, even if we do not see it. Alternaria disease of potatoes and so on and so forth. The forecast regarding vectors for the group of viral diseases is extremely relevant. Currently, no one is addressing this issue. This is absolutely very important because every year there are more and more aphids.
So, in your opinion, should there be a comprehensive and unified service, perhaps for monitoring this, or should it be?
Previously, it was a unified service. Unfortunately, it no longer exists, and there are no stations that would handle this. But it is indeed a very labor-intensive and quite expensive process. I don't even know when we will get to that.
Besides potatoes, this would probably be interesting for other crops and vegetable crops as well.
But ideally, it should be possible, as I haven't done this in a long time, to access the internet and view the spread of Phytophthora in real time in the United States. That is, there is indeed a map showing where it is flying, in what quantity, and what needs to be done. Wonderful monitoring, you can take a look. This is the AHDB website behind me, a fantastic poster. Despite the fact that we have our own better than this poster, it is hanging there. It monitors specifically for aphids. That is, when the first ice appears, what to do. Everything is outlined, prescribed, only unfortunately, what we are deprived of.
That is, modern startups that want to enter agriculture and offer something new to farmers.
Well, that would be great, yes.
This is like one of the motivations for work.
Well, for farmers, it would be a relief to at least know when to work and what to do. Maybe in this particular case, it is not necessary. Well, pleasure is expensive.
Alexander Davrov, a question about the 24 to 25 season, more specifically, the year 25. People are starting to think about preparing equipment and purchasing mineral fertilizers. Regarding your topic, what recommendations can you give to farmers on how to start preparing for the 2025 season? In 2025, I mean in terms of the fields, they are not yet covered in snow, so we can drive through, take some analyses and samples in the areas where potato planting is planned. Perhaps we can have preliminary negotiations with companies and suppliers of potato seeds. This is where to start, right? To systematically enter the season.
For me, the key point, and this is not just my brief interest, is that we conduct analyses of potatoes, of course, as seed material, which is of the first degree. Yes, because even if you have, let's say, weak and cheap protection, with a minimal number of treatments for potatoes during the growing season, you do not treat the seed potatoes. You have, so to speak, highly aggressive phytopathogenic complexes in the soil. If you plant quality seed material, you are less likely to encounter any problems, at least in the first year of its cultivation. It is clear that he will be collecting pathogens, but nevertheless, many problems will simply go unnoticed. Only in the middle of the material are certain pathogenic complexes present, and a headache is guaranteed for you, especially if they are species that cause extremely rapid rotting of potatoes, such as which you will see. Therefore, first and foremost, it is advisable to submit this seed material, even if it is your own seeds, to any laboratory you trust, and to demand not just numbers, but specific conclusions. In other words, someone conducts this analysis, like a doctor, who must determine whether to give this potato a chance at life, or if certain treatments need to be applied.
Regarding sampling methods, what recommendations are there? I understand that, for example, a standard storage facility for a farmer is 1,500 tons of potato storage. What recommendations are there for potatoes? How many tubers are necessary? Where should we take it from? I understand that the larger the sample, the better the result, but at least minimal requirements are needed to form a general picture, a block on the state of potatoes.
Yes, the larger the sample, the better, of course. But we are working in Russia, and we have two GOSTs for seed potatoes. And, in fact, the procedure for selection and the required number of tubers are described there. So, at the moment, we have 200. Well, in principle, this is more or less enough to say approximately what is going on with your potatoes.
Is it necessary to bury the potatoes deep in the ground, or is it enough to just plant them at this level?
Well, sparingly, not to take it with absolute certainty, that is, at least try to go a little deeper if possible. I understand that this is a very labor-intensive task. However, in my opinion, if there are problems with the potatoes, they will manifest even with such selection when they are disposed of on the surface, as practice shows.
Can your institute provide assistance, of course, for a fee in analyzing the condition of potatoes for farming enterprises?
Absolutely, yes. The more we work with potatoes and pathogens, the more we understand that probably the most important thing is to know the quality of your seeds. That is, there will definitely be a provocation of pathogens present in your seed material, and how all of this will manifest during storage, and accordingly, in the next season during planting. In other words, what to expect.
Regarding the provocation, there is a common opinion that I do not share, which suggests that to prevent the development of fungi and bacteria, ozone installations and ozonates can be used. My skepticism lies in the fact that by destroying some fungi, we may be allowing others to thrive, possibly through prolonged storage, and potentially altering the balance of the ecosystem, which could have unforeseen consequences on the environment and might lead to unexpected results in the long term.
Well, for me, this is a difficult question because since we are in a scientific institution, and as scientists, before answering such questions, we need to conduct an experiment, meaning it must be proven with controls, standards, and so on, that it works. If you see a real effect in your specific case, I always say yes, use it. If you see an effect, that is, this cannot be said about the zonator, but also about other preparations, installations, and so on. If it definitely works for you, don't overthink it, just use it.
Alexander, in conclusion, I would like you to share your perspective on the 2024 season as a whole, based on the picture you have observed across the country. Will there be issues related to storage? I understand that making predictions is not the most thankless task, yes, but overall what you see, what the company might face, what to pay attention to, and wishes for the season that is looming on the horizon.
You see the potatoes, they are in front of you. These are this year's potatoes that were brought to us for analysis. Well, we conducted the analysis on nematodes, right? But it is a matter of future technologies to transmit smell. That is, in this room, there is a wonderful scent specifically of bacterial diseases. This is ring rot and a complex of bacteria that cause wet rot. And unfortunately, it's all in storage. There are only 3 regions represented there. The Crimean and Lviv regions. What we see here can be completely compared to our Russia. In other words, the problem of fungi has not gone away. It will manifest next year to some extent. Unfortunately, it is worsening. It will be the first to worsen. This is about the storage of potatoes, that is, how well we can preserve them. Because in my practice, I was pleasantly surprised to find that even if the potatoes are severely affected by the Tembel complex, not only bacterial diseases, storage conditions are paramount, meaning that even heavily affected potatoes can show no signs of disease at all if stored properly, and all conditions are met. And exactly the same potato, if storage conditions are not met, simply turns into garbage.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Dear friends, my recommendation for this season is to adhere to the storage technology and the laying technology. If you are planting potatoes late in the season when it is already cold and there is no opportunity to conduct a treatment period, understand that this potato will not be stored for long. It needs to be sold in the near future. I wish you all a good and fair price. Alexander Vladimirovich, thank you very much. I hope this is not the last interview with you at our new meetings.